Hello and welcome to SkySwitch University. In this session, we want to handle answering rules and time frames. We'll handle them together because they interact with one another. Now, as we look on the system here on a user, on the Answering Rules tab, we will see that the system creates a default answering rule. Every time you add a user, it creates this same default answering rule. Now, this default time frame on the system is always, and so we'll look at that more in a minute. But you'll notice this rule is created when you add a user, and you can enable or disable this rule, but you notice you can't change the time frame because the time frame is default and it's always on the system. Now, you won't find this default always time frame in the time frames tab, but it's just on the system and it is always. And this is the answering rule that the system creates as the default rule: simultaneous ring all users' phones. And so I believe it also include users extension. Now we'll look more at this in just a second, but I want you to notice that it creates this default answering rule. Now let's look at the ring for time. The ring for time is set as default to 20 seconds, but you can change it from 5 seconds all the way up to unlimited. So it has certain ranges or settings that you can set it at, but the default is 20 seconds. Now, this is the maximum number of seconds that incoming calls ring for the user before the system routes the call to the user's voicemail or to the forward if unanswered, if that option is configured. Now, you'll notice to the right here the ability to allow and block numbers on a user. Now, let me state that if you need to allow or block, if you need to block numbers at the domain level, we can do that. You just open a ticket with support and we can do it at the domain level. But this allows you to allow or block numbers at the user level. So when we click on this, the allowed number allows you to put numbers in here that could then bypass the call screening and or the do not disturb. Now, this is the server side do not disturb, not the phone level, but on the server side do not disturb. So if you put an allowed number in here and you add it, then this number would be allowed to bypass the call screening if you have that set, or to bypass the server side do not disturb. So if you want to put your wife's number in there or your child's number, and you're busy, you've got do not disturb set on your phone, or you've got your call screening set, this would be a number that would be allowed to bypass those settings. And then also you can block numbers by putting a number in here. You may want to block certain numbers, and you can block anonymous or unknown number. An unknown number. So that is allow block. And so let's move on to answering rules. Now, it has the default rule, but of course you can add a rule. Now, when you add a rule, you're going to be able to select the time frame, whatever time frames are set on the system. Now, we'll set this to support hours. So you could have a business hours or support hours or work hours or main. You can have different time frames. So we'll talk more about time frames in just a moment, but let's look at the different settings that you can have within the answering rule window here. You can have do not disturb, which we mentioned a minute ago, and you can have call screening set on your phone, on your user. That way you can screen your calls. With this setting on, the system will prompt the caller to say their name, and then they'll let you screen the call before accepting it. And as we move down, we'll see the different call forwarding options. So you have call forwarding always, which that would override any setting. You have call forwarding on active. Now, on active is when you have one or two of your call paths busy. So you're on the phone, maybe you have a call on hold, in that case, what do you want to happen, or the caller that's calling you, where would you like to forward them to? You might want to, in those cases, forward them to an assistant or someone like that. So, and then you have call forwarding when busy. Now, this is when all call paths to your phone are busy, and so you can decide how you want it forwarded in that moment. You can also call forward when unanswered. And then the last one is call forward when offline. When offline would be when the phone has lost registration, either during a power outage or you've lost the internet access. What would you like to do? How would you like to call forward the call? You could call forward it to your cell phone. You could call forward it to an answering service, etc. So those are the call forwarding options. Then in the next section down, you have simultaneous ring. Now, simultaneous ring allows you to ring multiple phones at the same time. Now, you can include user's extension. Now, this will ring the phone associated with the user's extension. Typically, this is your desk phone that you've programmed on the user's extension as the first line, and so you can include it. You can ring all users' phones, which would ring all the phones associated with that user. So you could have a user that has a desk phone in the office. They could have a phone at home. They could have a soft phone on their laptop. They could have a PBX phone on their Android or iPhone. So you could decide to ring all the phones associated with that user. Then you have the answer confirmation for off-net numbers. If you include that and you include an external number in one of the fields, by using this and putting a number like a landline or a cell phone in the field, then it's going to request that the person press a 1 to accept the call. This is just ensuring that it's not voicemail, that you're actually ringing a person. So now, the other thing you can do here is put someone else's extension in. For example, let's say you have an assistant's extension that you want to put in here and simultaneously ring your phones as well as your assistant's phone. Now, we're going to also use this functionality in setting up a ring group. And we're gonna create a user that is a ring group, and we're going to ring multiple extensions at the same time. Now, I want you to notice in this field you are putting an extension number. You can put a particular phone. You could put like 210M, which could be your assistant's mobile phone, or your someone else's mobile phone. So you can put a particular device that you're ringing here. Okay, so you can also put delay. So if you add multiples, you could, for example, now this delay is going to go up to 20 seconds because we set our ring forward time to 20 seconds. So we could say, for example, I want to ring this first extension for, start ringing it at the same time it's ringing my other devices. But also after 10 seconds, I want to start ringing a different extension. Now, this one's going to continue to ring for the duration of the time, but this one will start 10 seconds later. So this is a way of simultaneous ring is a way of ringing multiple devices, and these are all the options that the system's giving you to ring multiple devices. Now, this last setting is just ring user's extension. Now, if you don't want to ring multiple devices, you only want to ring your user's extension, probably your desk phone, and you don't want to, and you either want to ring it or not. That's what this setting does. All right, so you're going to save that rule, and then now let's look at the interaction of time frames and rules. Okay, so now let's look at how time frames and answering rules interact with one another. The way you have a time frame that is active, you can have, of course, multiple answering rules, but a time frame helps you determine which answering rule is going to be active at a given time. And only one answering rule can be active at a given time. So the best practice dictates that you're going to order your answering rules according to how specific they are, with the most specific time frames, for example, like holidays, at the top. So let's build this out. Let's go to time frames, and you see we have a business hours time frame here. So 9 to 5. And I'm gonna build that out again just so you'll see. So in fact, we'll call this one work hours. And so you can build a time frame that is always. Now, of course, we have the default time frame on the system that can be used in the answering rule, the default answering rule that gets created during when you add a user. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the other two types of time frames you can build is days of the week and times. So we'll do that here. And you can do specific dates or ranges. So let's build out some work hours. And we will set those for, we'll set them for 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you just slide until you get the time frame you want on either end. Now notice also that you can have two different time frames within the same period, the same day. So I could set up two different times during the same day that I want that rule to apply. Okay, we'll just leave it as 1 for now. We'll keep it at 8 to 5. And so I'm going to save this work hours time frame. And then let's build another time frame that is a holiday time frame. So let's just say Thanksgiving. That's an easy one to remember. And we're going to go with it'll be November. We'll start it on the 22nd, and we'll go to Sunday. So we'll start it on 6 p.m. We'll start at 5 p.m. on the 22nd, and we'll go to 12 a.m. on Sunday night. Okay, so we'll save that. And so now we have a Thanksgiving time frame in its specific date range, and we have our work hours. So now when we go back over to our user, we'll just use user 1 as the example, and to answering rules. You notice the default rule here that, again, gets created every time you add a user. All right, so we're going to leave that rule in place, and we'll add a rule. And we're going to select our work hours time frame. And during work hours, I want to ring my user's extension and all my phones that I have on my user's extension, on my extension. Okay, but when unanswered, if I don't answer, I want to send it to my voicemail. Now, I want you to notice something here. When you create a user, it creates a phone for that user. It creates a voicemail, and I also have my bridge here on my voicemail. So you want to be specific, of course, where you send this to. If of course, I want to send this to my voicemail, but if I was sending this to another extension, I want you to see this. Notice it gives you the user, it gives you the phone and the voicemail. If you send it to the user, then that allows the answering rules of the user to come into play. Whatever 113's answering rules are set to, that's what will come into play. But if I send it to a phone, then it's just going to send it to his primary phone on that extension 113. So it's going to bypass the answering rules and just ring his phone. And then you have voicemail that you can send it directly to. Okay, so we will send it. I'm going to send, if I don't answer, I want it to go to my voicemail. Okay, so I'm going to save that rule. Now that is my work hours rule. And so I'm actually doing this video on Sunday. So this rule will become active on Monday at 8 a.m. And so the little icon will move up, and then the work hours rule will become active. Now we still have our default rule, which is always on here. And so we can always utilize this rule as the always rule, or the one that's less specific, than our work hours rule. So in essence, this becomes my after hours and weekends rule. And for that, I want it to go to my voicemail after hours and weekends, always. So I'm going to call forward for that. Let's say, okay, so now I have my work hours rules. I have my default, which is always, and it's going to my voicemail after hours. And it's ringing my devices while I'm at work. Okay, so now I also want to include a rule for Thanksgiving. So I'll go up, select Thanksgiving, and save. Now what we want to do is we want to put the most specific rule at the top, and you just move them, okay? Put them in priority, and save. And we want Thanksgiving to be a higher priority rule than work hours, because on the 22nd of November, these rules would conflict, right? So one's more specific than the other. That's why we give you priority capability. So on November 22nd, we're telling the system, hey, we don't want to use our work hour rules. We want to use our Thanksgiving rule on that day. And what we're going to do there is I'm just going to say, you know what, I don't want to be disturbed at all. So I might have some allowed numbers that can, bypass the server-side do not disturb and come to my phone. But I really just want to take the time off and not be disturbed. And so that's how you build your answering rules based on time frames. Now, we also in a separate video talk about ring groups. And so when you use the answering rules of a ring group or a routing user, you're going to use time frames, to route calls based on time frames. So during work hours, maybe you're in a ring group simultaneously ringing the sales department, which is 5 phones. Okay, and so but after hours, maybe you're going to send it to an answering service. You're going to always forward to an answering service. So that's how you're using time frames to work with answering rules. So if you have any questions, you can open a ticket with support at skyswitch.com or through our ticket system. Thank you very much.